Yeah, my name's Doug Hanners, and I've been a collector for 50 years, I guess, and I run the Austin Record Convention, which has been in business for about 40 years. My collection is mostly 50s rockabilly and rock and roll, and some R&B, but it's pretty eclectic. Well, 45s, I always liked them just because of the variety. Albums, although they're great, they just have a limitation. There's just not as many of them in any shape or form as there are of 45s. The sources for building a collection in the early days was, like I said, record shops, jukebox dealers, radio stations. It was a great source, and still is a little bit, but most of all those businesses have gone out of business now. This guy was, like I said, one of the better jukebox dealers in the entire state of Texas, and maybe in the whole Southwest. In fact, a lot of the records in here toward the back came from this guy in Waco. I was buying them steadily from him, and finally he passed away, and his wife said, "Look, why don't you just buy them all?" So I did. As far as records, I've got some favorites, but there's so many. This one here is, it's the Moonlighters on Tara, Rockabilly Baby. This is my favorite rockabilly record because it has all the Texas flavor that you could ask for in a record from probably 1957, 58, and the screams in the background by the band, and like 3 guitar breaks. I mean, it's just over the top in some ways, but to me that makes it a real classic, Texas rockabilly record. This is a Chicano band from San Antonio into the garage era. The owner of these labels, he had about 10 different labels, and it was Abe Epstein. He was quite the character, but he had great records, and he'd make them in these little closet kind of studios. But some of the greatest records out of San Antonio, especially in the 60s, came from his place. In southern Texas, it was where you found most of the Chicano rockabilly records, and that same agenda goes for the punk garage records from the later 60s. And this is, I don't know if you guys have you heard the Moving Sidewalks? This is Billy Gibbons' band before he got into ZZ Top. Yeah, it was before, and they did an album and probably about 6 or 7 singles. And of course their big influence was the other big Texas band at the time, is the Rocky Yerks and the 13th Floor Elevators. Surely you've heard You're Gonna Miss Me. It's the Freedom Gospel Singers. It's on Studio 7, this little label from Amarillo. Larry Cox is the guy that owned the studio, and he's deceased now, but he also did some really good garage records. All of his releases probably only numbered maybe 5 or 10. He just didn't, or maybe a few more, but he didn't do very many. And this is one of the best gospel things. This is a San Antonio record. This is the Songsters of Harmony. Pretty tasty, if I remember right.
I am lonely, so don't leave me.
It'd be nice this stuff get preserved so that generations down the road, in 40, 50, 100 years from now, people will be able to hear this stuff, because it's awfully unique, and I don't think it'll ever be reproduced. Some records I don't mind taking them off before they end, but these guys I can never do it. It's just like a sacrilege to cut them short. I mean, they were just so good.